What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today's video, as you can tell by the title, we're going to do an install of our 18 to 23 Mustang splitter kits. Now, our splitter kits consist of everything you see here. It comes with all the rods, brackets, hardware, everything. This one was upgraded with our splitter tunnels with the strakes on it. That's an option. You can just get a flat splitter if you don't want quite as much downforce, or you're racing in some class that mandates just a flat splitter. The other thing to note, since everything is made in-house, we can make the perimeter of the splitter larger or shorter, again, if you're limited by rules as what you can do. Now, jumping over to the car, this is I believe a 19, but just about all 18 to 23s should be the same. You can see we're already up in the air. Now, the very first thing you do before you lift your car up, you can see that I put tape with little lines above the wheel wells, and I did it on the other side as well. The reason you want the tape with the lines on the wheel wells, so when you jack the car up, you want to jack the car up level. You don't want to jack it up at an angle. That'll make sense in future steps when we set the splitter blade angle. If you jack the car up kind of, at 1 degree, like nose up, when you put the car down and it's resting, it'll then be pointing down further than you want, or vice versa, so I hope that kind of makes sense. So to install this, basic hand tools will do 99% of it. Only special things you might need would be something like a 1-inch hole saw, and that's for drilling the bumper where your splitter rods will pass through. And I used a Dremel with like a little corncob bit. We're going to need to clearance the radiator baffles ever slightly to pass some rods down. So that's really about it. We're going to jump ahead just a little bit because obviously the car is up on the ground and this is an R&D vehicle, so a few things are already on the car. But once you get the car to this point, that's where we're going to pick up. All right, so very first thing we're going to do is pre-install what we call our rear brackets. And you can see they will pivot a little bit on you. That'll make sense once we get it on the car. You want the bolt pointing in because the subframe of the car is pretty close right here. And if you notice, there's a decent slot on these J-clips as well as the back part. And that'll allow you to kind of fine-tune the splitter as far as forward or backward once it's on the car. Gives you a little bit of adjustment. The other thing to note, we're going to try and pre-assemble these, but if you see the little curved part, it goes up on both the front half and back half of the bracket. Only other thing to note, production pieces will have internal hard points here. Since this is a R&D splitter, we do these kind of bond-in hard points after the fact, and it will come with countersunk bolts as opposed to this setup here. The other piece you're going to want to pre-install is our chassis bracket. And it gets a washer on the front of the bolt and the back, and uses the long full thread bolts. This hole right here, another clevis passes through, so you can see this is where that Dremel, you might have to clearance a little bit of this baffle if you still have it. I recommend you keep it if you have it. It's sitting a little bit loose, but that's where you're going to have to cut a little bit of the plastic. So the front splitter rods are going to be the ones with no clevis on the top, but the clevis on the bottom. Out of all the splitter rods, they are the medium length ones. There's ones that are obviously much shorter, and then there's ones that are about an inch longer. So they'll be set up like this when you get them. All right, guys, so at this point, the rear brackets are attached, and the front rods are on loosely, just kind of holding stuff where we need to go. I'll show you underneath. We reuse those factory bolts. They're plenty long enough. Quick note on them, because they face upside down, it might be worth spraying a little bit of like liquid wrench or PB Blaster, something in there onto the top of the bolts, because when I first took these two out, they were pretty darn tight, and then I ran a thread chaser through it to kind of clean them up. So just a quick little note there. I'm right around the middle of the adjustment slot there, and on these ones as well. So yeah, once you get to that point, we're ready to put the rest of the rods on. All right, so picking up with all of the rods attached, I'll show you this side first. The short rod gets the 5/16 hex head that goes through to that clevis and then down to this point. The longest rod of the kit is the one with this little bracket attached. The kit's obviously going to come with this bolt, which is a little bit longer to accept everything, and comes down to this hole. Now, we've been working on a tow hook. So the tow hook kit is going to come with longer bolts because it needs to take up this much anyways. So very slight difference, but easy enough. These should be released soon. Look at the date of the video, because if you're watching this in the future, these might already be a thing. But yeah, so there's all of our rods. The mounting points in the back are tight. So at this point, we need to do angle. So super simple digital angle finder. And with, oh, other thing I should note is pretty much every rod right now is as short as it can go. And if you look, we're about 0.3 degrees nose up. Now the reason I sized the rods like I did, if you're all the way up and like 0.3, we'll call it darn near level, you definitely do not want a splitter that's nose up. That's probably the biggest issue I see with either people that build their own or some other aftermarket companies that make, I want to do air quotes, splitters. They don't take any of that into account. So we're going to adjust it down. This is the part of the video where it's a little bit subjective as to what springs your car's on, how stiff are the springs, how much performance you want out of the splitter, because if you add more angle to it, you'll make more front downforce. You can see that this car does not have a wing at the moment, and he still kind of drives it a lot. So I'm going to give him maybe a 1/2 degree, not quite a 1/2 degree nose down. With the rods all the way out, you should be able to get like 2 degrees down. But again, this specific scenario, I'm going to set it pretty mild. But when the car owner ends up upgrading to a wing and kind of wants a little bit more out of the front, you know, you can always adjust it down. The other thing I can show you at this point, compressible splitter rods are something that we came out with a year or two ago, and we use them on a lot of our splitters. What's nice about them is under hard braking, or if you're on track and you hit some like curbing or something, you can see, I'm just going to lift the splitter up, the whole splitter can give upwards. I'll put the camera down, might show it a little bit better. So rather than all the force of the splitter rods going into the splitter, you can see how the splitter gives. And that'll go a long way to the longevity of your splitter as well. Other quick note, we figured this out with the GT350 and our 6th gen splitters. If you don't want a spring for the complete carbon splitter blade, the rod and bracket kit will be kind of their own separate thing, and you can kind of build your own splitter and use all of our brackets. Should make mounting your own splitter much, much easier. All right, so again, so back to splitter angle. We're at that point, and 0.2, me messing with it, maybe just moved a little bit on us. 0.4, so anyways, fighting for a 1/10 of a degree. So at this point, we're gonna start loosening the rods. Now, oops, I think I went the wrong way. If you're loosening them and it's not really doing much, you can see the pin where it slides is no longer bottomed out. So this one is holding us up, and you'll see it kind of start to come down. Same thing with this one. And kind of keep going back and forth till you get it where you want it. Now we're at 0.1, but we've only been doing one side, so this side's probably holding us up. So just kind of keep going back and forth. Kind of go back and forth between all the rods till you end up getting it where you want it. So now we're finally 0.1 down. Oh, that one, yeah, this one's holding up this whole side. So there you can see we're at a 1/2 degree, and you can see we really didn't need to do much. So yeah, if you want to get pretty aggressive with the angle, you can. Now the other thing, once they're all set, you want to make sure the pins are bottomed out. As a prime example, let me just go way down with this one. You can see how the pin isn't bottomed out. So this one wouldn't really be holding much weight. There's almost like a loose spot on them when they get right to the point where they bottom out and there's zero tension on it. So we're bottomed out on all of them, about a 1/2 degree. What we need to do now is lock down all of our splitter rods. Then once we lock them all down, we're set. We need to undo the bolts underneath to drop the blade. Bumper needs to go back on. And last thing I think I forgot to note is you do want to check the splitter blade angle way out here. We're at 0.4 because this outer one can kind of lift up this corner a little bit. So we're good on both sides. The other thing I want to note is you notice the window washer bottle is still in it. It does just clear, but what I had to do, you can see I had to re-drill a hole a little bit lower there and there, and I had to notch the bottle there. Now the plastic is solid in these areas, so you can do that. Just be extremely careful, or most likely by the time you get to a splitter this serious, washer bottle is going to be gone. That bolt right there does not move, so it just kind of like pivots the whole bottle just enough to get that clearance. All right, so quick pause to show you how I did these holes here. So when I was doing all the R&D, this grill just kind of snaps out, so that was out of the way. I put the bumper on while the splitter was on and put some tape and measured, you know, or basically marked how it comes down. This was bolted to the splitter on both of them, so this rod was right where it needed to be. It might be a little hard to see because it's dark tape, but I have 1 3/4 inches. So I measured from the bumper down, and 1 3/4 inches was basically center line of the rod. So that's kind of how I found out exactly where to place the rod, or I'm sorry. So that's how I figured out where to drill the hole for the splitter rods. Now it's a little bit larger because the clevis needs to pass through when the bumper goes on. Or option B, because the top of this rod is the one that's bolted, you could try and do something smaller, but you also got to remember that these will kind of like move as they compress, so you want a little bit of play. The other thing to note is it just kind of happened to land right in line with this body line right here, almost right on the point of it, which is just kind of coincidence, I think, but that'll kind of give you like a reference mark, so you know that you're in the right spot. A quick note before I go back on with the splitter, this is the car we used to develop our lower radiator baffle. I'll put a tag to the video up here where we actually tested the pressure in front of and behind the radiator. Highly recommended to use this because the factory splash shield left a huge gap underneath the radiator. But yeah, watch that video if you're interested in this specific piece. All right, so as I'm trying to go back on with it, as you can see, we have a little bit of interference with the flange of the tunnel and the lip right here. Now, again, because it's like we're dealing with plastic bumpers, so if you know what I mean? It's like this has a bunch of wiggle room. Again, this lip, I guess this is a good caveat for this part. The lip on this car is supposed to be OEM, but we have an actual OEM one right there. And when we were doing the outlines for the air dam, they're quite a bit different. So this lip is a aftermarket lip, but it's meant to look like an OEM. Future me will put down below what lip that is, and we'll obviously have one for an OEM lip. So that'll be a selectable option. If you have an OEM, the aftermarket OEM, I'll double check where the car owner got this lip from. Or we'll probably have a third option in case you have some totally different lip where, you know, I know some aftermarket ones might have like more aggressive like points or whatever, where we can send you the air dam separate from the splitter blade, and you can kind of cut little slots to press your air dam in where you need it. A little bit more of a customizable option. Unfortunately, we can't have an air dam outline for every splitter lip out there. And the other thing to note is if you watched, like, if you've seen our 6th gen Camaro or a Corvette splitter install videos, we would use L brackets that are slotted, and you can kind of like push it where you need. This one, because the lip and bumper are so low, and we don't have the option to go right to the bumper cover, that's why we had to opt for putting the air dam in the blade ahead of time. So anyways, all that to say, I need to do a little bit of clearance back here, because that will kind of give us a little bit of room in here to make this kind of tuck down look a little bit nicer for us. All right, guys, so a little minor clearancing right there. We were kind of expecting that when we started the install. All of our splitter rods are rehooked up. So our outer, we're calling that the middle, and then the front, obviously right there. So we're gonna head underneath of the car, because at this point, the gap around the air dam, a little big in some spots, but remember, earlier, with this being slotted and the bracket above here being slotted, what we can do, you can slide the splitter. You got a little bit of room there, and you can end up sliding it to close up, to try and close up, you know, any gaps around the air dam or anything like that. So at this point, we're on the home stretch with a few like minor tweaks to get everything, you know, lining up, looking good. Keep in mind, it's a plastic bumper, and again, like I mentioned earlier, with the lip part, you know, factory or aftermarket, whatever, any final tweaks or adjustments kind of up to you to get it looking how you want. But yeah, at this point, it's like we're almost done. All right, guys, so here we are. We are on. Everything at this moment is tight, easily passes the stand-on test. So right now, what we need to do, we need to clearance the fender liners. Now, if you didn't get splitter tunnels, this step wouldn't really need to be done. You would maybe want to do something, you'd maybe want to try and attach the fender liners to the blade. But as you can see, as air wants to go up under the splitter and up the tunnels, you know, we obviously got to get rid of this bit kind of blocking the exit. Now, if you didn't, now if you just had, the kit is going to come with a few extra J-clips and screws. If you just had a straight splitter blade, somewhere right along this flap, you would probably like drill 2 into the edge of the splitter to hold it in. But since we have the tunnels, what we're going to do is trace it out, cut it, and we're going to use the flange around the splitter tunnels to add 2 or 3 attachment points. So that way the fender liner won't just be flapping around. We'll obviously reutilize the OEM clips on any factory holes. All right, so all I did was press it up against the tunnel to trace it. And you can see the, I used black, easy enough to see. I'm gonna trim that line. I'm just gonna trim it with tin snips. It'll be easy enough to cut through this plastic. All right, guys, so as you can see, I installed the J-clips there. There's one hiding further inboard there. I just used a regular drill bit. You don't need anything special. Started with a 1/8 inch pilot on all of them, and then opened them up to a 1/4 inch. And then at this point, just put your screws in. And, you know, nice, good exit of your splitter tunnels. I'll put all 3 of them, reinstall the factory clips, and we're about done. All right, guys, so as you can tell, as the air comes under, hit the splitter tunnels. It's got a clear exit now. Air will still hit your brake deflector if you have one. We have some carbon fiber brake deflector options. I'll put a link below to those. But yeah, we're looking good. And here it is, kind of all done up. All right, so a few last minute odds and ends. We installed our splitter scuff plates, and as you can see, they kind of give you a little wearable biscuit that you can change out, protect the bottom of your splitter. This customer also wanted our side plates. We do have canards that would fit, but this customer opted not to get those at the moment. The only other thing is if we slide underneath here, this finish panel, and that just kind of fills up the gap left over from this factory plastic to our splitter. You'll get a little more downforce. You might lose a little bit of cooling capacity. Probably hard to see now, but the radiator's kind of right there. This would allow a path for air to come out, which would help cooling, but that extra air kind of going under the car kind of hurts downforce and stuff. So there you go. So that's the finish panel. All right, here it is, all installed. Tow hook is in. Again, that'll be coming out soon, or if you're watching this video in the future, that'll be ready. So as you saw during the install of this video, this specific setup has pretty much all the options. It has the splitter tunnels, they're the big one, the scuff plates, that filler panel in the back, the side plates. You could put canards on the car as well. That can all kind of be done afterwards. And again, that radiator baffle, they're all separate parts, but I will make them selectable options you could just add to this kit. Now, if you just wanted a bare bones kit, it would come with just the splitter blade, flat with no tunnels. The air dam is, it will have the air dam section attached to it, and any splitter rods and brackets you need to attach it. That would be if you don't really need the front of the car to make a bunch of downforce, or you know, you got rules where you're not allowed tunnels or anything like that. So earlier I kind of highlighted how the splitter will come, you know, up for you if you know, under hard braking or you hit the curbing on the track or something. The other thing is it'll come with these clevis pins, and there's an extra hole in our splitter rods that will allow you to lift the splitter up and what that does is that'll lock the splitter up. It's about a ½ inch at the rod, but since it's at an angle, it'll give you like 3/4 of an inch. Now I'm sure most of you have tried loading a splitter where an extra like ½ of an inch would have made the car go on the trailer a lot easier. So this lockup option, that's standard on these kits. So that's another advantage to the compressible splitter rods being able to lock up like that. So there you go. Obviously link to this splitter and all other parts that I mentioned will be in the video description below. As always, thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you in the next one.